The new intern at the hospital was my husband's old flame. To help her secure a permanent position, they actually let our 3-year-old daughter contract a novel virus. After countless sleepless nights spent researching a cure, my husband snatched it from me and gave it directly to his precious old flame. They paraded our dying daughter at a press conference. Because they failed to administer the medicine in time, our daughter choked her last breath in agonizing pain. Then they turned around and falsely accused me, saying my ignorance had led to our daughter's demise. His old flame, with tears streaming down her face, sobbed on stage, "If only I had been faster. It's all my fault." I was bombarded with insults and vitriol from the public, while she, feasting on our daughter's blood, was raised to the status of a saint. Heartbroken and utterly despondent, I jumped from a high rise. When I opened my eyes again, I was back before our daughter had contracted the virus. In the hospital, my husband, Arthur, walked in with the new intern, introducing her enthusiastically to everyone. "This is my junior colleague, just back from her studies overseas. Everyone, please make her feel welcome and give her a hand where you can." Hearing those words, I instantly snapped back to reality. I looked up and stared at the woman who had just walked in. The woman snuggled up against Arthur's arm like a spoiled child, saying, "Senior, I don't want to get a permanent job just because of our connection. Don't you believe in my abilities?" Seeing their hands entwined, I felt nauseated. I pinched myself hard, and the intense pain confirmed that I had been reborn. I glared at Clara, my hatred for her barely contained. Arthur, protective of his darling, shielded Clara behind him, his brow furrowed in annoyance. "Are you imagining things again? Can you please not act like a lunatic in the hospital?" He still thought I was jealous. If only he knew that I wanted nothing more than to skin both of these wretched people alive. In my previous life, Arthur had also led Clara into the hospital, going to great lengths to pull strings, trying to get her a permanent position earlier. Clara, all the while complaining, happily accepted all the favors. But a hospital is not a playground. Getting a permanent position is never that easy. Especially not in our hospital, one of the best in the nation. Arthur and I had also put in a great deal of effort to secure our positions. So, to help Clara, they were so depraved that they stole an experimental vial of the novel virus from the lab. They disguised it as candy and gave it to our daughter, Beatrix. Beatrix, completely trusting her father, happily shared with me the candy that her father and an auntie had bought for her. I told her to not eat much because she was losing her baby teeth. Arthur then scolded me, saying children weren't that fragile and that it was a token of kindness from Clara, who had brought it back from overseas. He even brought it up in the office, and after Clara heard about it, her eyes reddened as she blamed it on her carelessness. My colleagues in the office assumed that I was jealous because Clara and Arthur were so close. Some patients, upon hearing this, also refused to make appointments with me. All of this I could endure. But a few days later, Beatrix started experiencing a fever, heart palpitations, and was vomiting blood. I rushed her to the hospital for a checkup, and discovered she had contracted the novel virus. But every meal was either at the kindergarten or was prepared by me. How was it possible she could have been infected? I didn't have time to think too much. I could only quarantine Beatrix and lock myself in the lab, working day and night. During that time, Arthur and Clara had visited, telling me with false concern that my daughter's condition was getting worse and worse. After several sleepless nights, I finally developed a cure. Before I could even step out of the lab, Arthur barged in, pushed me to the ground and snatched the medicine. They then hosted a live press conference to unveil the cure, using Beatrix as a specimen, and failed to inject her with the medicine for a long period of time. I desperately tried to break in, but I was blocked by security. I could only watch as Beatrix slowly breathed her last. They filmed my breakdown and said it was my ignorance that led to Beatrix's death. I was cyberbullied, lost my job, lost my daughter, and jumped from a high rise. And Clara, with her success story and miraculous cure, secured a permanent position, and was elevated to a godlike status. Now everything was clear. They were feasting on Beatrix's blood, all to achieve their own goals. I clenched my fists, lowering my head to conceal the hatred in my eyes. This time I would make them pay in hell. Back at home, Beatrix came running to hug me, smiling. I told her sternly, Don't eat anything your father gives you. Beatrix nodded obediently, which eased some of the weight in my heart. In my past life, I would have tried to persuade Arthur and Clara to keep their distance. This time around, I wanted nothing more than for them to be together. Seeing that I had no objections, they became even more bold and affectionate in the hospital. There were even stories of them feeding each other in the cafeteria. A colleague who went to the same school as them also told me that Clara was Arthur's white moonlight, and that I should be careful. But my attention was no longer on them. Whenever I had time, I would plunge myself back into the lab. Because I was so rushed in my previous life, the cure wasn't perfect. Using my previous experience, I actually upgraded and developed a preventative vaccine. After many trials, I felt safe enough to give it to Beatrix. Beatrix, hugging me, said in a soft voice, "Mommy, Daddy gave me a box of imported candy today, but I listened to you and didn't eat a single piece." I threw the box of candy straight into the trash. When Arthur returned home, he smelled strongly of Clara's perfume. Seeing the candy box in the trash, he frantically pulled it out. "Why would you throw away Clara's kind gesture?" I feigned surprise. "What's wrong?" Beatrix had already finished the candy. "Can't I throw the box away?" Arthur opened the box. It was empty. He laughed awkwardly. "I just didn't want you to misunderstand Clara because of all the rumors you've heard lately." After saying that, he went to embrace me, but I dodged him without making it obvious. In the hospital, I treated Clara with a smile, like a concerned and caring senior colleague. It was Clara and her relationship with the married Arthur that people began gossiping about. My patients were aware of my relationship with Arthur, and they would defend me in their beds. "Dr. Yvonne, you should be more careful. That vixen is practically glued to Dr. Arthur." I smiled gently. "You must be mistaken. They're just regular colleagues like brother and sister." Clara's reputation only worsened. Arthur had to begrudgingly keep his distance from her at the hospital. But after work, he still made sure to take Clara home first. A few days later, Beatrix collapsed at kindergarten, running a high fever. I anxiously asked Arthur to pick up Beatrix from kindergarten with me. On the way to the kindergarten, his lips curved upwards. It was as if Beatrix was not his own daughter. What a heartless and soulless man. Beatrix's forehead was burning, and her body was covered with rashes. I looked at Arthur, crying, "What should we do? How did Beatrix get like this?" Arthur quickly rushed Beatrix to the hospital, and Clara came running out. Without even examining Beatrix, she shouted, "This is most likely an infection from the novel virus." Before I could even say anything, Arthur glared at me. "Beatrix has been in your care. How could she suddenly contract a virus?" Passers-by immediately began to point fingers at me. "Looks like we shouldn't put our trust in doctors. She even let her own daughter contract a virus, let alone whether she could infect us." Without any examination, without any diagnosis, they used their two mouths to label me as an incompetent doctor, a negligent mother. I lifted my head and snorted. "Are you sure Beatrix is infected with the novel virus? Are you just going to jump to such conclusions?" Hearing my question, Clara immediately reddened her eyes. "I was part of a medical aid mission in South Africa. The novel virus claimed the lives of many people there. Could I be mistaken about something like this?" At this moment, the head of the hospital, who was on good terms with Arthur and who received several favors from Clara, came over with a stern look. "It's hard to say whether you're stupid or wicked. Your own daughter gets infected, but you're still dragging your feet. Are you afraid that Dr. Clara will take your position as deputy director?" Just like in my past life, I was attacked on all sides, isolated and helpless. After I agreed to an examination, Beatrix's infection was confirmed. I was left speechless. Clara sighed, saying that I wasted time, otherwise, Beatrix's condition could have been managed sooner. My colleagues gossiped about me whenever they saw me, saying that I was jealous of Clara and Arthur's closeness and used my daughter's infection as a way to win back Arthur's attention. I ended up backfiring on myself. I lowered my head, pretending to wipe away non-existent tears, secretly curling my lips into a smile. Beatrix's hand moved slightly. Clara, who was sharp-eyed, saw this and immediately ordered, "Let's move Beatrix to the intensive care unit. I'll start the treatment there." When Beatrix woke up, she cried and grabbed my hand, repeatedly saying that she was in pain. Arthur walked over and slapped me. "You're even hindering Clara from treating Beatrix. Do you want Beatrix to die?" I covered my face, my voice choked with emotion. "I'm just worried about Beatrix. We eat the same food, and the other children at kindergarten are fine. How come only Beatrix is sick?" Everyone was talking at once. Someone thought for a bit and said, "Don't children like to eat snacks? Adults usually don't." As if a light bulb had turned on, I grabbed Arthur, with a look of concern on my face. "Recently, Beatrix said her teeth hurt, so I haven't let her eat any snacks. But that day you gave her candy, and she ate it before I could stop her. Did you eat any?" Arthur's face went pale. He brushed me off impatiently. "Why would I eat candy?" But he overlooked the first part of my question, that he was the one who gave her the candy. Besides the candy, the food, clothes, and lodging were the same for me, him, and Beatrix. When candy was mentioned, Clara reacted even more strongly. She anxiously ordered the staff to move Beatrix immediately, saying that if she wasn't sent to the intensive care unit, Beatrix might not make it. Arthur then proceeded to guilt-trip me. "Are you even fit to be a mother? Children have weak immune systems. You didn't let her eat anything, and now you're blaming me? What exactly is Beatrix's life to you?" I wanted to ask him what exactly is Beatrix's life to him. Everyone persuaded me to let Beatrix be treated first, and that the reason could be found after the child was healed. I nodded. After confirming the hidden camera was still on Beatrix, I allowed Clara to take Beatrix away. 2 hours later, Clara emerged, looking exhausted. Everyone watched, waiting for her to speak. She smiled weakly. "Fortunately, I have experience. I've managed to stabilize Beatrix's condition, but it will take me some time to research a cure." Immediately, praise for Clara flooded the room. Her lips curled up, the corner of her mouth stretched higher. If Dr. Yvonne had not wasted so much time worrying about Beatrix, I would have been able to start the treatment even sooner. Arthur patted her shoulder. "It's not your fault. It's someone's ignorance that led to all this. Go focus on researching the cure." Everyone rushed to put me down, saying that I was a frog in a well, unable to compare to a doctor who's come from overseas. I stood to one side asking coldly, "Dr. Clara, are you really sure that Beatrix is infected with the virus?" Clara crossed her arms, full of self-confidence, with not a trace of guilt in her eyes. "If it's not the novel virus, what else could it be? Dr. Yvonne, I'm treating you with respect as my senior, so I did not raise my voice. But you keep questioning my professionalism. I have had so much experience. I can't be wrong. But you have no experience." She didn't finish her sentence, but everyone understood what she meant. A person with no experience dared to question Clara, who had just returned from her mission in Africa and had just treated my daughter. In an instant, I was once again attacked from all sides. Earlier, she was acting like a pitiful mother, worried about her daughter. Now she looks like she's just ungrateful. When her daughter was rushed in, she was probably not thinking about whether her daughter would be healed, but she was probably thinking that the new doctor was going to threaten her position. The insults were hard to hear. Arthur rubbed his forehead, looking pained and disappointed. "Yvonne, when did you become like this? Jealous, selfish, and using even your own daughter as your bargaining chip. If not for Clara, Beatrix might have died just now." I laughed coldly inside. What a waste for them to be doctors. Even Oscar winners aren't as good of actors as these two. In the previous life, after Clara said she had temporarily stabilized Beatrix's condition, she had Beatrix quarantined and wouldn't allow me to visit. No matter how much I begged, Arthur would only say vaguely that I should wait. Wait for Clara to research the cure. Wait for her to achieve fame and success. But Beatrix couldn't wait. So, I had to look everywhere for patients who were infected with the same virus. I observed their symptoms and studied their infected cells. I stayed in the lab day and night, sleeping for no more than 3 hours every day, to develop the cure. And Clara, after Beatrix's quarantine, still went out on dates with Arthur every day, and had time to get beauty treatments. When the media asked for updates, she would put on a show and pretend to walk through the lab. Arthur knew that I was researching the novel virus, and he would give my data to Clara to cover up her lack of progress. He would even say, "Clara has more experience than you. If you give her your data, Beatrix will recover faster. The next time I saw Beatrix, however, was at their premeditated success celebration. I saw my daughter, pale and in agony, curled up in a hospital bed. Her small body was curled up, as if she could disappear from the world at any moment. And her father was standing there smiling, looking at the woman under the spotlight with love in his eyes. This time I wouldn't let them achieve what they want. I looked calmly at Clara, the corners of my mouth curled upwards. I am truly ignorant. What are the symptoms of this novel virus? I hope that Dr. Clara will be able to explain them to me. Clara would not let any opportunity to show off pass her by. She snorted coldly and prepared to give me a lecture. In the early stages of the virus, the infected person would experience a headache and stomachache simultaneously. Afterwards, they would experience full body spasms, accompanied by a fever, and finally, full body rashes and organ failure. Looks like she knows the basic knowledge well. Unfortunately, compared to my understanding of the novel virus, she is destined to lose. I quickly pointed out her mistakes. The headache and stomachache would not appear at the same time, and not everyone will experience full body spasms. Only those who suffer from insomnia and neurasthenia would. I looked straight at her. So Beatrix's high fever should mean that she's already in the middle stage of the disease. I then looked at Arthur, confused. Honey, you have been coming home late these past few days, but Beatrix hasn't been sleeping either. Has she complained about headaches or stomachaches? Arthur, my husband, instinctively defended Clara. Maybe Beatrix has been feeling unwell for a while but didn't want to worry you. Instead of questioning Clara here, you should thank her, so you don't affect her research mood. I honestly couldn't believe he could be so shameless. I must have been blind to have fallen for him in the first place. Arthur had always struggled academically in college, and had only gotten into this hospital through my connections. Yet now he accused me of being ungrateful. When I first got married to him, my best friend warned me. She had heard that Arthur's first love was a junior classmate from college. They broke up because the young woman had to develop her career overseas. He never forgot about her, and harbored a strong flame for her in his heart. At the time I had considered breaking up with him, but he had given me his word, that he was no longer in contact with Clara and only wanted to settle down with me. My soft heart had been repaid with his betrayal. I pinched myself hard, lifted my head, my eyes red with tears, trying to portray a pitiful and wronged expression. Honey, how could you think like that? I'm just too worried about our daughter. You were there with her the whole time when she got sick, and you were also there for the treatment. As a mother, I was left in the dark about everything. How could I not be worried? I reasoned with them, pulling at their heartstrings. Many people in the room teared up, chiming in. Yeah, it's normal for a mother to worry. Nowadays, who doesn't treat their own children like treasures? Clara, who had never been a mother, clearly didn't understand. She frowned. Treatment is a doctor's responsibility. What doctor has the free time to explain everything to the family? It's not as if they'd understand anyway. That made even more people unhappy. Even if a family member didn't understand the treatment, they still had the right to know about their loved one's condition. Especially since I was a doctor myself. If Dr. Yvonne doesn't deserve to know, then are we even more undeserving of knowing our own family's conditions? Perhaps Clara had stayed overseas for too long. At this moment, she argued, Dr. Yvonne, are you trying to start a scene? As a doctor, you should know the consequences of delaying treatment. If I hadn't been reborn, I might have, just like in my previous life, hysterically questioned them, falling for their accusations. But I merely raised my head, looking fragile, tears welling up in my eyes, my voice choked with emotion. Honey, why aren't you saying anything? Is it wrong that I want to know about my daughter's condition? Arthur had a big ego. He couldn't overpower me in the hospital, but at home, he would like to throw his weight around. I had finally given in and acted weak. His arrogance faded. You don't know anything about viruses anyway. I'll be by Clara's side the whole time, helping her develop the antidote. What are you worried about? Do you want me to call in some virus expert just to make you feel better? Those experts are all so busy. They're always flying around to different countries. My eyes lit up. Honey, you're so smart. My professor's wife is a virus expert. She'd definitely be willing to research this new virus. As soon as I said that, both of them looked guilty. Clara in particular became very impatient. Yvonne, what exactly do you mean by that? After all is said and done, you're just implying that I'm not capable. But I did control Beatrix's condition. Your husband wouldn't lie about that, would he? Wouldn't lie to me? How could she even say that? They wanted to use Beatrix to drive me insane, drain my resources, and have Clara take my place. Sure enough, the next second Arthur was pretending to be concerned. We can handle this. Why bother so many people? You can also come and help after you've rested well. I secretly curled up my lips into a smile, yet I wore a look of someone who had done wrong. So, Clara is that amazing, able to solve the problem of even the newest virus. I just don't know if this virus is contagious, especially since so many people were standing here just now. There were still family members of patients nearby who hurriedly asked, "Yeah, is it contagious? What's the cause of the infection?" Of course, Clara had no idea. She was about to rudely dismiss everyone when a gentle but powerful voice came from behind me. "I heard there's a case of novel virus infection here? That's quite rare. As I remember, this virus is only found in South Africa, and they only keep samples in hospitals. I never thought I'd see a real case." This immediately caused panic. Everyone asked Clara to explain. Clara scoffed. "I stayed in South Africa for so long, there's no way I'm wrong. As for the source of the infection, you should ask Dr. Yvonne if she took good care of her daughter. And the one over there, it's normal for you to be ignorant. Virus transmission is just that fast." I wanted to laugh. Clara was truly adorable in her ignorance. The woman who had just walked in looked at Clara with disbelief, then smiled slightly. "Your name is Clara, right?" Clara scoffed. "What? Is it not my name? Yvonne, I have already been very considerate of you. Can you please stop wasting everyone's time? My research is very busy." Arthur stepped forward to clear any obstacles for his first love. The head of the hospital, having heard the commotion, also came out. "Who is making a ruckus in the hospital? Yvonne, I think you should go home and rest." But when he saw the woman at the entrance, his expression changed completely. "Professor Grace, what are you doing here? Did Professor Quinn come with you?" Hearing Professor Grace, Clara froze. "Which Professor Grace?" Grace Chaucer was my mentor's wife, the vice dean of the medical school, and of course Clara's professor. Grace looked at Clara gently. "It's normal for you to not know me. After all, every time I called attendance you look different. I don't really remember what you look like." As expected of an outstanding teacher, her passive aggressiveness was top-notch. Clara always asked someone else to attend classes for her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have failed so many classes and had to use the excuse of going abroad to finish her studies and get her diploma. The day Arthur and Clara took action, I had sent a letter to my teacher's wife. She had friends teaching in Africa. They told her that Clara was just all show and no substance. She was just lying about having volunteered in Africa. Every time she said that she was allergic to UV rays and couldn't be in the sun. But when everyone was busy, you'd find posts of her adventures on her social media page. The sun in South Africa is toxic, but the people's hearts are warm. A medical student who doesn't even recognize their own professor is very rare, if not unheard of. But now one was standing right in front of everyone. Can we trust her to treat patients? She doesn't even recognize her own professor. The hospital head is fawning all over her, which means she's a titan. She doesn't even know the titans in her own major? The head of the hospital overheard the gossip and couldn't hide his embarrassment. He quickly changed the subject, saying that he wanted to take Grace out to lunch and to celebrate her arrival. But Grace, being a professional, immediately asked to see Beatrix first. Clara panicked and blocked Grace. "Beatrix needs to rest now. She just had surgery. If you barge in like this, you might worsen her condition." However, the next second the door opened from the inside. Beatrix walked out herself. She looked sleepy and pale, running over to me and jumping into my arms. "Mommy, I'm still sleepy." Clara immediately pulled Beatrix away, her voice sharp. "Look how pale Beatrix is. If I hadn't treated her, would you even be able to see her again?" Arthur was as pale as a ghost. He scolded Beatrix. "Why did you run out by yourself? Don't you know that your Auntie Clara saved you from death's door?" Did you listen to your mother and do this to target your Auntie Clara on purpose? Grace squatted down and carefully examined Beatrix's arm, as well as her eyes and tongue. Finally, she chuckled. I didn't know that a simple cold with fever could be diagnosed as a virus infection. Beatrix was also confused. I got a shot inside and it hurt so much. After that, my eyes wouldn't open. I was so sleepy. She then sneezed. I touched her forehead. She was still running a fever. The fever continues even after treatment? Is that part of controlling the disease? Clara stubbornly argued. Can a professor diagnose whether it's a virus infection with just feeling her? How can a professional rely on just their feeling rather than using an instrument to test it? Who didn't see Beatrix was red all over? If it wasn't for me, how could she recover so fast? So, who was the one that was jumping to conclusions based on only a glance? Love truly made people blind. Arthur pulled me aside. Did you deliberately bring your professor's wife here to make things difficult for Clara? At the end of the day, it's because you've been suspicious of my relationship with Clara. Do you have to make such a big deal about it? Even now, he still wanted to blame the whole situation on me. It was all because I was jealous that I planned everything and forced Clara into this position. And Clara was just a kind person who was trying to help my daughter, and was now being deceived by me. I didn't want to waste time arguing with them anymore. Since they said they wanted to use instruments to test her, I had no objections. But they didn't dare. Clara and Arthur tried desperately to stop it, and their unusual behavior was clear to everyone. But a titan in the medical world was here. The head of the hospital wasn't an idiot. He knew which side he should be on. Moreover, Arthur wouldn't dare tell the head of the hospital what he and Clara had done. So the head of the hospital was still being kept in the dark, still truly believing that the two of them would soon solve the problem of the novel virus, and bring even more prestige to the hospital. He waved his hand and allowed Grace to take Beatrix for testing. The testing process was public. Everyone could see it through the glass. There was no way they could fake it. 2 hours later, the results came back. Beatrix was not infected with a virus, and there was nothing wrong with her body. The fever and dizziness were just from the fluctuating weather, a seasonal cold. They even found traces of sleeping medication in her system. How could a child so young be given sleeping medication? But the irony was that the person who gave her the sleeping medication wasn't just anybody, but her own father, the man who was still trying to defend Clara. I authorized the sleeping medication since the child was moving too much. What's wrong with that? I stepped forward and slapped him. The problem is that Beatrix was not infected with the virus. You know what you did in there for 2 hours. There were a lot of people around, so Arthur didn't dare strike back. He said that he was only helping Clara take care of Beatrix, and that it was all a misunderstanding on my part. Clara's mental fortitude was truly strong. She was still insisting that her treatment had been effective. Grace told Clara directly that she could have her job if Clara could explain the treatment she used. Clara stammered, unable to say anything. Everyone could see who was using Beatrix to gain fame and fortune. Using your own daughter to benefit another woman? Does he even deserve to be a doctor? The public opinion instantly turned. The overwhelming shouts and curses drowned out Arthur and Clara. Clara's eyes were red and she said, aggrieved, "Isn't it just a misdiagnosis? Why are you guys trying to create a conspiracy? I admit that I still have much to learn. I was truly wrong this time." She then tugged on Arthur's sleeve. "Senior, I told you that Beatrix only had some symptoms of a virus." Arthur, I don't know whether to call him a fool or a love-struck man, who liked being used as a pawn. Yes, Clara only said Beatrix had some symptoms of a virus. I wanted to help her get her permanent position, so I asked her to do that. That's right. He got into the hospital because I begged them to take him. Everything was given to him effortlessly. Naturally, he felt that a job was nothing. It couldn't compare to the woman he loved most. They both admitted that it was just a misdiagnosis. They were all colleagues, and as long as Beatrix was okay, there was no need to make it so difficult. The crowd was always interested in gossip like this. They were all chattering, saying that Arthur would rather diagnose his daughter as infected and use it to help Clara secure a permanent position than to tell me that my daughter was safe and sound. Some people even felt that I must have wronged Arthur. Otherwise, even a tiger wouldn't eat its own cubs. He wouldn't have treated Beatrix that way. What is this victim-blaming nonsense? That's how people are. As long as it doesn't involve their own interests, they'll persuade you to turn big problems into small ones, and small ones into nothing. So the head of the hospital coughed once and said sternly, "Let's end this matter here. How can we expect patients to feel at ease when there's so much chaos?" Since it wasn't a virus and people weren't afraid of infection, the crowd was about to disperse when they heard the sound of police cars. Before long, a team of police officers came in quickly. "Who called the police?" I raised my hand. Although I wasn't the one who had called them, I had sent a message to my best friend Mia when the head of the hospital came out and tried to play peacemaker. The police walked up to me and asked why I had reported a murder case. Hearing the word murder, Arthur quickly explained, "It's just a family conflict. My wife has been acting strange lately. She's been paranoid." Calmly, I handed the pinhole camera, which I had taken off of Beatrix, to the police officer. "I suspect that Arthur and Clara are conspiring to murder my daughter Beatrix." Clara panicked and tried to attack me, but the police held her back. The police asked me for evidence. I pulled out a transparent bag from my medical bag. The bag was sealed so you could only see a piece of candy inside. At this moment Beatrix asked, confused, "Isn't this the candy that Daddy and Auntie Clara gave me that day?" I handed the candy over to Grace. Arthur and Clara were restrained, unable to break free. They could only watch as Grace took the candy for testing. The virus attached to the candy was quickly detected. Arthur was still stubbornly saying that Beatrix was not infected, so the candy must have been fine. I just wrapped something around the candy and brought it up to his mouth. He desperately dodged. "You're trying to set us up. You could have poisoned it yourself." The police had already pulled up the video. In the video, Arthur and Clara were walking around in a panic. Clara was asking Arthur in a hurry why Beatrix seemed to only have a simple cold. Arthur, patting his chest, promised that he saw Beatrix eat the candy. She would definitely be infected. They didn't know how to control the situation, so it didn't matter to them whether she was infected or not. Seeing that Beatrix kept saying that she was hot, Clara must have been annoyed, and randomly injected her with a sleeping medication. They also felt that it was too early to leave the room, so they just began flirting with each other in the intensive care room. In the end, Clara was a bit worried. How long should we say that it takes to treat her? What if they ask me to produce medicine and data? Arthur scoffed. Yvonne cares so much about Beatrix. When the time comes, just tell her that Beatrix is dying. She'll do anything to research a cure. We just have to sit back and reap the benefits. I should be glad that Beatrix was asleep and didn't see this disgusting scene. Or I should be cursing Arthur for being such a monster that he could act so carelessly with his lover after his daughter had been injected with a sleeping medication. Even the police couldn't stand it, and cursed at him, calling him an animal. Now the truth was clear. Clara and Arthur were using Beatrix to secure Clara's position. The enraged crowd immediately started throwing things at the two of them. No matter how much they tried to defend themselves, saying that no normal person would put a camera on their daughter, and that Beatrix didn't even eat the candy, they were cornered. I was just a mother who was worried about her child, afraid that her daughter would have cavities and so didn't let her eat the candy. I put a camera on her because I was afraid that my daughter would be injured during treatment. They said the words and they did the things. All the evidence was there. Grace hugged me with sympathy and revealed everything that Clara had done in Africa. She pointed at Arthur and said, "You're such a heartless and soulless bastard. You were even recommended for this internship because Yvonne used her patent to get you in." Arthur was now panicking. He tearfully begged, "Wife, that slut seduced me. I love you. It was her idea." I kicked him hard. "Take your grievances to prison." They blamed each other, both saying that it was the other person's fault. "Are you even a man? You were the one who said I could use your daughter's infection to get a permanent position. After I got the position, you said you'd dump Yvonne and be with me." I covered Beatrix's ears so she wouldn't hear those foul words. The two of them went to the police station and then to court. They were sentenced to prison for suspected attempted murder and stealing the hospital's important research resources. And the head of the hospital, who was a master at reading the wind, was also fired after Grace sent a letter of complaint. After I successfully became the head of the hospital, I first took the cure to Grace. She was very surprised. After perfecting the formula together, she left with a sense of responsibility and flew to South Africa to provide real aid. Beatrix, holding my hand, said that she had come to pick me up from work. Her soft voice was strong. "Mommy, I want to be like you and Grandma Grace and be a very, very good doctor." The end.